Dana White's Contender Series. This is Season 8, Episode 5. We have 5 fights lined up this Tuesday night. I'm John Kelly. Let's hear the picks. And we're going to get things started in the women's flyweight division as Karine Laframboise, as they like to say in Canada, is minus 125. The comeback on Nicole Cagliari is minus 105. So this one's currently priced competitively, and I could see why. Because on one hand, we'll start on the Laframboise side. She's an 8-4 prospect fighting out of Canada. She's 35 years old, and she's the former UAE Warriors flyweight champion. She is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that's when she's at her best, when she's able to grapple with people, get the fight to the ground. But honestly, I don't think her striking is very good, and I think her wrestling could be improved as well. At times, I've seen her struggle to get the fight to the ground, and that's where she typically, doesn't really have a backup plan. I also don't fully trust her cardio either. Now, 2 of her professional fights actually came against current UFC fighters, Manon Fiorot, which nobody's going to knock her too much for that loss. Fiorot's an absolute beast. But the other one, which is more concerning to me, it was a little bit earlier in her career, but it came against Jamie Lynn Horth, who we know is not a very great fighter. She's big. She's a decent striker. She's not known for her grappling. She basically made Laframboise quit in that fight and ended up submitting her in that spot. So I don't really trust this 35-year-old Canadian grappler. I don't think the UFC is massively pushing her. I think this is a decent matchup here against Nicole Cagliari, who seems to be the more well-rounded of the two to me. She's a 7-2 prospect fighting out of Brazil. She comes from a Muay Thai striking background, and she is going to have the advantage while the fight plays out on the feet. Now, she's also a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I don't think she's a better submission grappler, but I also don't think that she's dead if this fight does go to the mat, because even though she's been giving up takedowns on the regional scene, she's usually very active off her back and pretty good at reversing position as well. So it's one where I expect Cagliari to be the better striker here and winning the minute standing, but also I don't think she's dead in the grappling. I expect that to be competitive, and a slight lean on the Cagliari side in the cardio department. So it's one that I think plays out pretty close. I'm going to lean with the slight underdog here. We'll say it's Cagliari by decision. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we'll head to the Bantamweight division as Otari Tanzilov takes on Josias Musasa. Currently, we have Tanzilov minus 238 favorite. The comeback on Musasa is plus 180. And we'll start on the Tanzilov side. He's a 9-0 undefeated prospect fighting out of Georgia. Of his 9 professional victories, 7 of them have come by knockout, and he seems to be a very good striker. He has that Zabit Magomedsharipov striking style, the spinning back kicks. He is a sniper on the feet. He works the body well in combination. He's actually finished multiple opponents due to a spinning back kick. So he's definitely a sniper on the feet, very powerful, and he picks his shots very well. But what I also like about him, especially in a matchup like this, is it's not just the striking. We've seen him go to the wrestling at times. He's fully capable of landing takedowns and controlling his opponents on the mat. And I think that could be a very big edge here against Josias Musasa, who is a 7-0 undefeated prospect. All 7 of his wins have come by knockout. He's very explosive. From the opening bell, he just moves forward and tries to take your head off, but he's very one-dimensional, and he gets very reckless as well. We've seen him go through adversity in one of his fights, even though he hasn't faced really anybody in terms of the level of competition. And I don't trust the cardio either, because when he's all gas, no brakes from the opening bell, you just can't keep up that type of pace. And we even saw, the 1 or 2 times where it started to get towards the end of the first round. He's only fought in the second round once in his career. It definitely seemed like he started to slow down. And I just have serious questions, not just with the cardio, but with the defensive grappling as well. I think Tanzilov's the cleaner striker on the feet, and if he can keep it at range, he's just going to pick apart Musasas at range. And I also think he can hit takedowns as well and has the better gas tank. So he's one of the more confident plays on the card this week. I think Tanzilov by TKO is going to be the official pick, and he's going to keep things rolling in the DGen parlay. Which brings us to our next matchup. This one's in the middleweight division as we have returning fighter Yusri Belgarui. He fought on last season of Contender Series. He dropped the decision to Marco Tullio. Now they're bringing him back in what I think is a clear setup fight against Taiga Iwasaki. Currently, Belgarui is a minus 425 favorite. The comeback on Nawasaki is plus 300. And we'll start on the Belgarui side. I think they were trying to set him up a little bit last year on Contender Series. I ended up betting Tulio as a dog in that fight, and he ended up coming through. Really, the reason I bet Tulio, and we saw Tulio come back a couple weeks ago, looked good on Contender Series. Now he got the UFC contract. So it certainly wasn't a bad look for Belgarui. But the reason why I backed Tulio in that spot was because I knew that Tulio had the grappling. He's capable of landing takedowns and pressuring guys up against the fence. And we saw that play out because Belgarui, over the course of his career, he's struggled with that, right? Like, the guy comes from a high-level glory kickboxing background. He's actually fought Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira. And Alex Pereira is actually one of his main training partners. He also trains with Glover Teixeira as well. He's been working on that grappling. So he's in the gym with some very good fighters, and he's very long for the division as well. He's got a powerful kicking style, and he's got power in his hands as well. 5 of his 7 wins have come by knockout. But aside from the grappling concerns, I just think Belgarui is much better than this guy, Nawasaki. Taigo Nawasaki is going to be giving up a ton of size in this fight. He's got a very interesting career. You look at his career, he didn't face anyone with a winning record until he was 8-0. And then they gave him former Bellator champion Rafael Lovato Jr., who submitted him inside the first round. So, like, it was just very bizarre, all super low-level guys. Then they give him someone that's clearly old, at like 40 years old at the time, but still a very good fighter, and he ends up getting submitted in the first round. So I don't know what they were doing there, but regardless, I think this is a clear setup spot now for him because I just don't think the striking is anywhere close to that of Belgarui, and I don't think Nawasaki has the grappling chops or the ability to pressure and cage push and land takedowns like we saw Marco Tulio do last season. So I think this is a clear setup spot for Belgarui. They clearly want this guy in. Like I said, he's within the circle. Alex Pereira, Glover Teixeira. He's going to get his hand raised, and he's going to get a contract. There's very little doubt in my mind. We'll say it's Belgarui by TKO. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our next matchup. This one's in the welterweight division as Cody Steele takes on Quamel Otani. Currently, they have Cody Steele a minus 200 favorite. The comeback on Otani is plus 154. And we'll start on the Cody Steele side. He's a 6-0 undefeated prospect. 3 of those 6 wins have come by knockout, but he's actually more of a grappler. This dude comes from a high-level grappling background. He's very known in the grappling streets because he competed in grappling for years. He's a high-level black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But in terms of his MMA career, he hasn't really been tested all that much in just his 6 professional fights. And his striking is very explosive and powerful, but he certainly leaves openings. He has been tagged and rocked a couple times on the regional scene, and his wrestling's very solid. I already mentioned the grappling, and his cardio seems to be on point as well. So no concerns there. It's really just about his reckless nature in terms of the striking. And on the flip side, the Otani side, this was actually the first bet I placed this week. I have 2 units on Otani around plus 175 because I just think this is a really competitive fight. I actually like both of these guys a lot. Otani is a 12-3 prospect fighting out of Brazil. 11 of his 12 wins have come inside the distance, 8 of which have come by knockout. He's just a very well-rounded guy. The striking, very powerful, sharp leg kicks as well. And he's also a slick submission grappler. He holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. But the thing I like about him most is the experience. On Contender Series, almost all of these fighters, you hear me say they haven't fought anybody. They've only faced guys with losing records, etc., etc. That's not the case with Otani. Not only does he have a win over Alex Pereira, who we just talked about with Belgarui, he fought Alex Pereira in Pereira's professional MMA debut and ended up submitting him. So that's always going to be a feather in his cap. He also fought Acacius Dos Santos, who just recently fought for the LFA title and also fought on Contender Series a couple years ago. So, like, this dude has legitimate experience on the regional scene. He's the former welterweight champion over in Jungle Fight promotion, and he has a family full of martial artists. His brother's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and a coach at one of the gyms over in Brazil. His sister fights MMA professionally, and she's like 6-1 and just fought back in August. Like, their whole family, this is what they eat, sleep, and breathe, and they're very talented at it. So, like, I just think Otani's going to be very competitive here. And even though I like Steele and I like a lot of what Steele does, I just cannot get to this number. And that's why I had to play Otani pretty strongly, because I think Otani, at worst, this is a very competitive fight that plays out close to a pick'em. And I just don't see, like, plus 175 is stupid to me. I could even see a world where Otani just flat out looks a little bit better than Steele, due mainly to that experience. So it's one where I could see it going either way. I think it's going to be super competitive. I like both of these guys a lot, but I think this line is clearly wide. There's value on the underdog, and I'm going to say Otani catches him. It's really just the reckless nature of Steele. That's what has me worried for him. I think Otani can catch him and maybe make him pay. We'll say it's Otani by TKO. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our main event in the light heavyweight division, as Navajo Sterling comes in as minus 280 favorite. The comeback on Philip Latou is plus 210. And we'll start on the Sterling side. This is another city kickboxing prospect. He's a 4-0 undefeated prospect fighting out of Australia, and he trains with Izzy, Dan Hooker, Carlos Olberg, you name it, all those CKB guys over there. And he seems to be a very good striker. He comes from a highly credentialed kickboxing background. He's a 2-division kickboxing champion, and that's certainly what he brings to the table. He's very long, very big for the division, and if the fight plays out at range, he's going to be very good. He uses his length to his advantage well. He's got power in his hands. He's a good athlete with good cardio as well, so no real concerns except for the grappling, simply because he hasn't been tested, and we know a lot of these city kickboxing guys end up being a little bit one-dimensional, so I do have concerns with the grappling. I just don't think it's going to play out in this fight because Philip Latou, very similar to Sterling, really has no interest in the grappling. His one professional loss came by submission. The times when he did look to grapple on the regional scene, it was kind of ugly. You know, his takedown entry, super sloppy, had pretty much no success when he did try it, which wasn't very often. But he's more of a striker as well. All 6 of his wins have come by knockout. Most of them have come early. He actually trains at Elevation Fight Team. And even though he's going to be giving up a little bit of size in this matchup, I believe he's listed at 6'3". There's no shot this guy's 6'3". Like his opponent Sterling, 6'4", he's a legitimate 6'4". If you look at Latou, who's listed at 6'3", he trains with Dominic Reyes sometimes. Reyes is 6'4". Reyes legitimately looks like he's 4 inches taller than Latou. You look at Latou's last fight against Dylan Potter, who's listed at 6'3", and he looks like he's 2 or 3 inches taller than Philip Latou. So somebody's lying here. Maybe he's a little embarrassed to be considered a short king in the light heavyweight division. But regardless of the size, I think he actually carries a little bit more power with the hands. He's very explosive, and his striking's very solid. And because he trains at Elevation, I don't think his cardio's bad either. So I just kind of see this fight playing out competitively with 2 good strikers, 2 guys that have power, that are capable of hurting each other. And for that reason, I think the line is wide here. Even though I'll take a poke at plus 210 on the dog here, it's not enough for me to just flat out pick him, because I do actually think Sterling is a little bit cleaner in the striking, and I think that length and size is going to play a factor down the stretch. So I'm going to say the official pick is Sterling by TKO, but I think it's more competitive than the betting odds suggest. So for that reason, I think there's value on the underdog. For the DGen parlay, the pick is going to be Sterling by TKO. So to recap for the DGen parlay in the first women's flyweight fight of the night, I like Nicole Cagliari, slight underdog. I just think she's the better striker here. I have questions that La Flambeau is going to be able to grapple her consistently over 15 minutes here, and I think she loses the striking. So give me the slight underdog in the first fight of the night. In the second fight of the night, one of my more confident picks relative to the betting odds, Otari Tanzalov. I just think he's the cleaner striker, very sharp with the leg kicks on the feet. And Musasa, outside of that first round, I have some serious questions with his cardio, but even in the first round, he's got a very reckless style, and I think Tanzalov is going to be the better striker, be able to pick his shots and pick him apart, and then land takedowns if he needs to if the fight gets extended. In the third fight of the night, I think it's a clear setup spot for Yusri Belgarui. I think this is a massive advantage for him in the striking. I don't think Nawasaki has any type of grappling to really threaten Belgarui here. And in the striking, I think he's a sitting duck. We'll say it's Bugari in that one. In the fourth fight, my biggest bet of the card, I like Otani here. I just think the experience is going to pay off here against Cody Steele, who's still relatively green in terms of MMA. I know he's got the high-level grappling background, but Otani can compete in the grappling as well. He's got the striking and the experience. I think plus 175 is too wide. We're going with the dog there. In the final fight, in the main event, I'm going to slightly lean towards the city kickboxing prospect in Navajo Sterling. I think he gets it done here, even though I think the line is wide, but he's going to round things out in the DGen parlay. And as always, guys, appreciate you watching. Best of luck, and we'll see you next week.